Today I want to talk about knowing your audience. I'm very active on social media. I used to be more active on Twitter, but Twitter has a problem with deboosting and censorship that is just far beyond any other platform I've seen. So I'm more active on Facebook than anywhere else. Yes, you can say that Facebook censors as well, but Facebook actually censors less than Twitter. It's kind of amazing. So I post 20 to 30 memes a day on Facebook. And I'm very active. If someone wants to argue with me on Facebook, I will engage them. I try to engage as much as possible. It's very rare that I will ever block someone. I have a public profile. Like I said, I post 20 to 30 memes a day. A lot of them are just straight up insulting, and they're extremely racy. They're bigoted, but I'll post them anyways. Why? Because it's funny and it's fun. I couldn't ever become a politician because of everything that I post on social media, but I don't care because it's called having a sense of humor. I may not even agree with everything I post on Facebook, but it's funny. And that's all that matters. So, like I said, I'll engage with people. And I'm very vocal. I'll especially engage with people I disagree with. So because of this, a lot of people message me in private. People who won't attack me in public because they're pussies. So they'll message me in private and they'll attack me in private and I won't respond to them. And of course, this makes them madder. So they'll insult me and spam me and they'll hound me and they'll make multiple accounts and start spamming me more. Those people I will block. But they don't understand why I don't engage with them in private messages. I'll engage with them publicly. Why not engage with them in private? Because I don't engage with them publicly to convince them. So why should I engage with them privately to convince them? All they're going to try to do is trap me into saying something that I shouldn't say, something that I may not even disagree with and that may not agree with on second thought, just so that they can attack me publicly, take that private conversation, post it publicly. Look at this bigot. Don't engage in that. There's no point. So why engage publicly though? And it's explained in a single scene in the movie Thank You for Smoking, starring Aaron Eckhart. Aaron Eckhart was Two-Face in the Batman Dark Knight trilogy. And in this movie, Aaron Eckhart is he's a lobbyist for Big Tobacco in Washington, D.C. And he's trying to explain to his son what he does for a living. So he says to his son, they're eating ice cream cones at a carnival. So he says to his son, if you wanted to debate with me on what's the best kind of ice cream, how would you do it? So the son says, I like chocolate. Chocolate is the best kind of ice cream. It's all I ever need. It's all that really needs to exist. So the father says, well, I think you're wrong. I like vanilla. I also like chocolate. Some people like strawberry. We can have Neapolitan. I believe people should have choice. And I don't think you should be telling people that chocolate's all they're allowed to have. It's about choice and it's about freedom. And the son says, but that's not the argument. He immediately recognizes that this is a straw man argument. Now, I'm not advocating for straw man arguments. I think you should always try to argue in good faith. So straw man arguments are bad faith arguments. The left tries to use a lot of straw man arguments. But moving on. So he immediately recognizes it's a straw man argument. And the father says, well, that's irrelevant. I won. I proved that you're wrong. It's irrelevant if I won in a different argument. All that matters is you're wrong. And if you're wrong, that means I'm right. Son responds, but you didn't convince me. How did you win? You didn't convince me. Father says, well, that's irrelevant. I'm not here to convince you. I'm here to convince them. All the plebeians in the crowd at the carnival who aren't paying attention, who aren't part of the discussion, who aren't part of the conversation, the onlookers who don't even know that the conversation is happening. They're the ones who are important. You're not there to convince the person you disagree with. You're there to convince the people who are quiet, the people in the middle. More often than not, you cannot convince the person that you're arguing with. People on the extreme right as well as people on the extreme left, they're dead set in their ways. No amount of facts will ever convince someone to change their argument because it's irrelevant to them. No amount of Socratic deconstruction is irrelevant because they're not there to be convinced. They're there to win. And being convinced means they lost. So people will not be convinced because they have a bias to wanting to win, which is a good thing, but you have to be willing, and most people are not. Except people in the middle, people who have no dog in the fight. They're the ones you need to convince. So social media, unfortunately, is a bit self-selecting with this. For instance, I won't even speak on Twitter because of all the censorship. On Facebook, most people who disagree with me have already unfriended me. They've unfollowed me. They've blocked me. You're not engaged with them anymore. They're gone. But there are occasionally people on the left who are like me. I'm on the right though, who want to have the conversations, and they'll argue whether it's in good faith or not. They'll still argue, and the people who haven't banned you, they're the ones you can still convince. So I like I said before, I post 20 to 30 memes a day, and the people who like my memes, the people who put reactions and emojis on my memes, I'm not there to convince them either. They're the choir. You don't preach to the choir. You don't need to convince them anymore. They're already on your side. So I'll post 20 to 30 political memes a day, and there'll be like 5 to 10 people who like all my memes. But there are more people looking at it than 5 to 10. And I know this because occasionally I'll post something that is completely unrelated to politics. I'll talk about a movie I just watched, whether I liked the new Coming to America, which I watched last night, or, right now I'm talking to Thank You for Smoking. And there would be people who I never see post on any of my stuff. People I don't even realize I'm still friends with because they're quiet. I assume they unfollowed me years ago, and then they'll like and respond to those messages. And that tells me, wait a minute, they're seeing my messages. That means they don't necessarily disagree with me. They're on the cusp. Or maybe they do agree with me and they just can't say it because they're public figures in some way. I got one friend who's a teacher. He can't like any of my political posts, but my non-political posts, my media posts, the TV shows, movies I watch, they'll respond to that stuff, which tells me that they're open to my ideals. And they're the ones you need to convince. They're the ones that you're trying to engage with, even though they're quiet. And that's why you need to stay vocal on social media. You can't just leave Facebook or leave, like I said, you can't, leaving Twitter is different because it's not about leaving Twitter, it's about being kicked off of Twitter. But you can't just leave Twitter and Facebook and go to Gab or Minds because you need to engage on the platform where everyone else is. You need to be with the critical mass, and you need to be able to convince people who are on the cusp. And you can't do that if you self-select in social media. So if the left has a platform, you need to be on that platform too. Keep at it. They're there. You should be there as well. Don't be silent. You don't know who you're reaching and who you aren't just because they're not saying anything. You know you're not reaching the radicals. You know you're not. So, but engage with them anyways because they have friends who aren't on the right as well. They post to your stuff, their friends see your stuff. Maybe you're going to convince one of them. You don't know. It's a spider's web. You need to put all the branches out as possible. It's a tree. I'm mixing up my analogies here, but you get what I'm saying. Anyways, Thank You for Smoking. It's a fun movie. You should watch it. I haven't seen it in years. All I really remember is this one scene because it's a great scene. And I've been sharing the scene with people for many years to explain why I still chat on social media with people who I will never convince. Anyways, peace out. I'll see you next week.